pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our first order of business tonight is a public hearing with the Cable Advisory Board regarding the license renewal with Comcast. We have a motion to open the hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, unanimous. We will open the hearing. We'll begin with Steve Castle, who is the chair of our Cable Commission. Steve?
Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here. Just want to give you a brief presentation to let you know how we envision Templeton Community TV or TCTV going forward, and we really think it can be a vital community resource, as the slide says. So just a brief overview, our cable TV license expires this December, and we've been ascertaining the town's needs as part of this cable license renewal process. Through this, I've been talking with a lot of organizations, department heads, and people throughout town. When we did this license back in 2005, there was a strong interest just in having the station. And now there seems to be a pretty good interest in moving forward with it and doing a lot more with it. So, public access stations are called PEG stations for public, educational, and government content on that. And that is set, the funding for that is set through the cable license. So it's something that we have to work with Comcast. So we have a Comcast representative here tonight as well. So our current funding levels are 2% of the TV revenues that Comcast earns in town. We can go up to as much as 5% to do that. Right now, we're getting about $45,000, $46,000 a year for that, and the station is run principally by the Cable TV Advisory Board. So 3 people plus a part-time videographer basically run the whole station. And you know, it's tough because there's no full-time staff that we can really rely on to do the day-to-day things. It's almost done on a volunteer basis. And because of that, the resources are limited, especially with manpower. So what's our vision going forward? We really think that Channel 8, TCTV, can be a very effective informational hub for the town. And it can become a real asset for the town to get information out there, televised meetings, events, and other things. And you know, the more you do this, the closer the town can come together, I think. And you can really tell the story of Templeton, and not just the story, but the stories of people in Templeton. Get them to events, and really bring the community closer together. And hopefully that can even be an economic asset for the town going forward. So we do public notices now, and you know, we get a lot of those in. Actually, we can get a lot more in. And I think as far as the town goes, it's an underused resource. We can put in office hours. We can put in things that departments need to know about, you know, taxes and assessments and things like that. Vital information, as well as safety and emergency information from the police and fire departments. When are the burn permits available? And other information. We're even talking with the emergency response people about automating the system possibly to put storm warnings and other events up on the station as they come in with the way weather is today. They're crazy tornadoes in Massachusetts. We also do a lot of meetings. We do the Board of Selectmen, the school committee. We've done occasional Board of Health, Planning Board, Advisory, and we do special town meetings. We'd like to broadcast the annual town meetings live from the auditorium, if possible. And we'd like, you know, Board of Health, Planning Board, Advisory to be regular meetings. Hopefully we can get them to meet in this room, when we get this room equipped with permanent cameras. It would be very easy to take those meetings and get them on the air. And ZBA, I think, when appropriate. We can also do programs on local artisans and craftspeople, events and concerts that the Cultural Council puts on. We're talking about maybe doing open mic nights whether it's in a studio or the auditorium or the bandstand on the common. And obviously more shows for kids and seniors, and interviews with community leaders. We were talking to Bob about possibly doing a show where he can interview people in the town. So again, we've been talking with the COA about seniors and shows at the senior center. And we may set up a camera system there and train you how to use it. And I think Diana has an idea of a show that she'd like to produce on a monthly basis. We're talking with the library and doing story time for kids where people will read the stories. They do this in Gardner and they get a great response for it. I think people could line up to read stories to the kids. The cultural council as well, as I said, and certainly events, parades, arts and crafts fair, things like that. Police and fire safety. We'll talk to the chief about smoke detectors and maybe doing a brief video on safety with that, on burning. And we can do stuff with the police department as well. Talk to conservation about maybe going out and touring wetlands and protected land, and also, meet your town departments and what can they do for you? And maybe that stems some of the bad feelings that people have toward government in town when they get to know you a little bit better. We're talking with the school about their programs, and they are really, really interested in working with us. They're at a kind of crossroads right now with an interim superintendent, interim principal. The video production teacher has left. The person who was supposed to replace him has left. But this is an opportunity for them to really write a curriculum, and they're looking at maybe going with multimedia, and all the kids use iPhones and tablets to record video and give them a chance to put that on the air and edit it. So this could serve as a feeder system for Templeton Community TV. We've already had a couple of young men from Narragansett who have worked with us. And, I hope we can get a lot more. And also, as part of our capital grant draft that were proposed, we want to offer scholarships to those students who want to pursue video production or a related field. So let's say a student comes out of Narragansett really into it, works for the cable TV station on a volunteer basis and wants to go to the Mount for broadcasting or somewhere else, we could give them, a nice little scholarship to help them along. I think that would be a great thing for the town to do. As part of this too, the STEM is a big thing in education now, science, technology, engineering, math, but what they're finding out is the humanities have slipped to the side with that, and they want to bring arts back in and now call it STEAM. So this is a great way to bring more creative things in there. The Narragansett School has a engineering STEM program with robotics in the middle school, and maybe the kids could take videos of that and parlay that into more artistic and creative uses as well. I think that's going to be very valuable going forward, especially in colleges. So we have needs to do all of this. This is a pretty broad vision, and as the gentleman said in our afternoon hearing, how are you going to do all this? You need volunteers. Well, yeah. And we also need a staff person that's a station manager to really oversee that, and that's what we really don't have right now with the funding that we have. If we do a nonprofit and set up a 501c3, right, yeah, with the town, we may need an executive director for that. We may need an educational coordinator to work with the schools. I don't see, even if we take 5%, how we can staff 3 people like that. Maybe one of those, maybe those 3 things are, 2 go into one job, like a station manager / executive director, or station manager / education coordinator. Maybe one's full-time and one's part-time. And we also have equipment upgrades. We're using, even in the back of the room where Corey is, we're using 8-year-old equipment right now, and it's holding up pretty well. But we've had tripods that are broken. We've had a steady stream of DVD players that no longer work, hard drives that no longer work. It's electronics, right? Stuff breaks after. We just sent back our programming server. We have haven't been able to run programming the last couple of weeks because of this. It just came back today, so I think I know what I'm doing tomorrow. I gotta get that thing back, yeah. And, you know, that's been a steady scheme. And we're looking to do maybe, everyone tells us you should really do HD now, even though I don't know if Comcast will give us an HD channel, but for the future, that seems to be the way to go, especially if you want to do streaming with this. So that's going to be costly, and we need building repairs. This here is our station. It's an 8x12 closet, pretty much, that we built. We built it all by hand several years ago at the food pantry, and you can see the clutter there. We need storage space. We have to save those boxes in case we need to send things back. In fact, the programming server I just sent back is in an old box that was almost waterlogged. They wanted the original box in the original packing material. So we need to spread out a little bit more, and I'll get to more of the building issues in a bit. As part of the capital plan, this room right now, we've sent out an RFP for our permanent camera system. We can use that closet for a control room. We've had several companies visit, and we'll be getting in the bid shortly on that. And that's something that we're earmarked for quite a while because we've waited a long time for a town hall room, and it's nice to have it finally. We can put a really nice system in here, get some of the other boards to have meetings here as well, and we can do a lot with that very easily. One of the issues is going to be video transmission from here to the station. We're looking at alternatives to that. We will be talking to Mr. Roman in the contract negotiations about some of that, see what Comcast can help with. The station at the food pantry building is an old light department barn in Baldwinville. Look back at the businesses right there, and it's in pretty rough shape. The roof leaks, see the water damage from the roof, the walls, it's really bad. We've got this huge crack on the floor. It's actually become a hazard. People could trip over it. And, you know, if we do that part of that slab may need to be broken up because the building is actually sinking on one side, just a slab. So that's a big issue. And this is basically the whole station right here that broadcasts out. That's the piece that we're missing in the program. It's right there. The school district, we've talked about allocating some money for live broadcasting in the auditorium. That shouldn't be too difficult. We can use, for the time being, mobile system similar to what we have in the back of the room, and hopefully plug right into a connection that can send it out on the school's hub. It gets a little complicated. There's lots of conversions going on between digital and analog there, but we've talked to people and we can do that. That shouldn't be too much money. But the big needs in the auditorium are microphones. We found out at the special meeting that 2 didn't work. And that was the first time I sat back there and I put the headphones on. I could hear everything the selectmen were saying. I said, at least the mics work. And 2 of them didn't. Only 1 was working. So, and I can attest that recording in that room is a nightmare. Because you have to tie into the audio board. It's not a very good system. You never know what mics are on what channel. So you got these audio boards with sliders, and each one is marked. You know, like this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have no idea. And we usually have to go in early and test them out. Go through, you know, tap, tap, tap. Is this line? Is this channel 3? Is this channel 4? We need a better system there. It needs to be better organized. We could eventually put in permanent cameras like we're thinking of in this room there. We backed away from that a little bit right now, but I think that's going to be in our 10-year plan. And mainly we only backed away from it because we're not sure the school will be able to use it right away. And we might only use it for town meeting a few times a year, so it's worth that expense yet. But we hope that they can build a really vibrant program where, you know, at one point they wanted these robotic cameras in the Kiva, and we weren't so sure about that. We think the auditorium could be a good place for an advanced class, and then they could take school plays, concerts, whatever else they put on in there. I think that could be a really good asset. And the Kiva as a studio as well. We really have to wait on the school at least a few weeks to see what direction they want to go in. I've asked for what equipment needs list and, you know, they have to shrug right now. It's not their fault because they have to figure out what their curriculum is going to be. But they may move into more of a multimedia role with that, with some broadcasting and that, all within the parameters of broadcasting on Channel 8. Some wrap up here. So overall, I think Templeton Community TV can be a much better asset for the community than it has been. We can really improve it. We can really make it an information hub, and maybe not just on the cable channel, and combining the public education and government roles, but it needs some level of staffing. We need to address the facilities, and certainly we need some equipment upgrades to make that happen. So that all equals robust funding, but with that, I think we can have a really vibrant and energetic station that can do a lot more for the town. And thank you for your time.
All right, Steve, can you introduce the people from Comcast?
Yes, absolutely. This is the Comcast representative, Ben Perlman. And Ben, do you want to say anything? Or?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee and board. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Ben Perlman, Manager of Government Affairs for Comcast, and happy to be back in Templeton and listen to the comments and be part of the ascertainment process, and look forward to negotiating with members of the committee and special counsel and town. So thank you.
And we have our counsel here, Steve.
Special counsel is Bill Sullivan.
Good evening.
Sullivan?
Good to be here. Bill Sullivan, Special Cable Counsel. Thank you for the hearing tonight. I did briefly say, reiterating briefly what Steve mentioned, is public education and government access is a tremendous tool to connect the public to the government. As I said at the department meeting, in an age where everyone thinks everyone does nothing, it's nice to let people know through video that they're interested in watching what government does in the services. Earlier today at the hearing, we heard from the fire chief about things that, and public works, about different functions they have that would be fascinating to people, so people can see where their taxpayer dollars go. As Steve said, it personalizes the relationship. When you know someone, you understand what they're doing, it makes residents feel part of the community. Public access also connects community members to other community members, to groups and organizations. Even though it's a somewhat rural town and the business community is limited, you have folks in Templeton here who are artisans, people who make products, agricultural products. You have small businesses, and you have groups that have sports or gardening clubs or gun clubs or churches. They're all looking to get their message out. They're all looking for a way to get support, to get more members. And what public education and government access, mostly public access, can do is connect those people to those organizations and get that message out and bring a sense of the community, which Templeton has and is growing. So it adds, as Steve said, not only to the cohesion and the sense of spirit, but also to the local economy, which there are numbers nationally that show it's 2% of the folks in the town spend some dollars locally rather than going somewhere else to a chain, that has a massive effect on the local economy. So it's about community, it's about economy. You have a great start with the volunteerism of Steve and others, but what the town needs to do and what the community is planning on is try to come up with an organization. So this is something that can continue going forward. You have one person who can help organize, who can be out there for outreach, for getting equipment out, for coverage of events. That one person can multiply times 10 and 20 and more because volunteers then become part of that process. So that's what this ascertainment's about. The only thought to the public, thank you for coming, is the cable license is traditionally a 10-year license. So you have one chance every 10 years to figure out where you are and where you want to go. So this is your chance to speak today. If you're going to speak, you're encouraged to speak. If someone says something that you're going to say, typically people go to meetings and say, hey, we don't want to hear 10 people say the same thing. But Comcast Government Affairs Representative Ben Perlman here could hear from one person, and everyone else said, well, someone said that. And next, he can say to us in negotiations, hey, only one person said that, when there were really 10 people here or 15 people here who wanted to say something. So have your voice heard. This is a chance to fund an important part of the town, and what you have to say has an effect on Comcast, so thank you for being here.
I think we've done you did a good job of explaining the public access, but that's not the only part of the contract. Could Mr. Perlman give us a little more detail of what's in the contract? What's the agreement that we're going to sign?
It's a renewal of the existing cable license. I'm sure Bill will fill in more about what the town's passenger needs are for everything, whether it's the system requirement, those served, the PEG access organization, the PEG access funding, and capital funding. There may have been any other requirements the town may wish to request. So, Bill, has anything further?
Yeah, just briefly on that, the number of issues are somewhat limited. There's the service to your residents. So the town has an interest in making sure that as many residents as possible have service. Templeton in that regard has a good license now. We believe that almost everybody has service available with very, very limited exception. Secondly, there is discussed this PEG funding that has two components. It has the operating funding, usually a percentage of the company's gross revenues, now 2%, that needs to go higher to do the things you need to do. That can go up to 5% of gross revenues under the federal law. There's also capital funding for the facility and funding for equipment. That's separate from the PEG operating funding, not limited by the 5% cap. And there, the committee has reached out to a very well-respected company, camera company that has a new name, that's done together with the committee a capital plan for what you need at your studio, for what you need at the town hall, for what's needed at the schools, for what's needed for video equipment. So that's the funding for PEG access. There's also, as Steve mentioned, there's the question of where can you have live cable origination. You have live cable origination, I believe, now from the town hall.
No.
Oh, you know, okay. So, I know from the, I think,
From the school and from the state.
school and the studio. So that going forward, and this is the work that the committee's done, that there's typically an interest, as the committee has ascertained, to be able to go live from this building, so that if you want meetings live, they can be live. So that you want to determine, are there any other areas, and the committee's worked on that there's a need for live programming. Sometimes, if you have a meeting once a year in a building, you don't necessarily have a need for live programming. You can tape it and take it elsewhere. So operating funding, capital funding for facility equipment, live origination, where do you need to go live from, build out for the system, and then most of the rest of the contract really deals with legal terms and public way issues and insurance indemnification and that. And I develop a model that I think protects the town fully, that I believe we can get to an agreement with Comcast. So the largest issue is really the PEG access issue, and the other one's already taken care of, the availability cable, which is in Templeton in good shape on.
This afternoon at 2 o'clock we had a gathering of municipal department heads, and Dr. Hemmon was here from the regional school system, and we talked about something that is not in the current contract, and that is a dedicated education channel. The law provides that the community can have as many as 3 channels: the public channel, the government channel, and the education channel. We have only the government channel, and one of the goals going forward with the negotiations would be to have access to the education channel, which would be used exclusively by the schools to provide information to parents with their programming, doing live programming from the auditorium, for example, covering sports events, also obviously being involved with Phillipston and some of those, as well as accepting programming that originates in other communities in Massachusetts having to do with education. And in addition to the programming, it would provide opportunities for students to learn the field, to learn more about this technology, particularly when some of them may very well go into this area in their careers. So it's training opportunities, practical experience opportunities, as well as providing more information about the school system and education programming to parents and residents of the community. We don't have that in the contract now, but that would be one of our goals.
Steve?
I can just add a little bit to what Bill said too, in terms of build out. A couple of things that we can also negotiate are density requirements and drops and the lengths of drops to the driveways. So those are two more things I think that we can put on the list. And we've developed a list of needs from the town that I think I've shared with the board at various times, and we'll keep you updated on that as well.
Okay. Let's start with comments and let's hear what people want to say. Obviously, a lot of you have come tonight, you have an interest, so Diana, why don't you start?
Could I just have your name? Diana Morrison. I'm the director of the Council on Aging, and I didn't make the 2 o'clock meeting because I'm opening a new building and I just didn't make it. I'm beginning to support the seniors of Phillipston. Is this programming going to be available to the citizens of Phillipston?
Phillipston has their own cable contract.
Right. Do they?
Yes, they have their own. It used to be with another provider. I don't know if Comcast has it now. The town has their own cable system.
Right, but could they tune into?
They
Our
receive channel 8.
Do they?
Do you?
Okay,
I
good.
did not know that.
Yes, and the gentleman from Phillipston was here this afternoon and said he wanted to keep it and had some other suggestions for, making sure that the school could feed Phillipston and Templeton the same, and also that the Templeton station stay visible.
Okay.
Anyone else have any comments or questions?
Do you have any idea of where you might want to build or occupy another facility?
Besides the light department building, we've talked with the school about the Kiva, and I have mixed feelings about it, mainly because we've talked with the school before about the Kiva, but access was an issue, and they couldn't give us access. I know Dr. Hemman very much wants it there, and he's looking to do a hallway renovation where there'd be another set of doors, so the Kiva has an outside door, we can get in at night, and then use the bathrooms across the hall, and then they can shut off the high school, which I think could be a good solution. We would have to put the station in the small control room that's right off of the Kiva, but every AV expert and broadcast person who brought into the Kiva has said it really is not a good room for it. And actually our consultant said you could use it as a studio if you ripped out all the seats. I don't think the school is going to want to do that. So I think it's possible, and the acoustics are also very, I wouldn't say they're poor, but it's what you would call a live room. If you clapped, you'd hear a little bit of a reverb. And especially since they took the acoustic ceiling tiles down, I guess some of them were falling down at one point. I would imagine, and I'm not an expert at this, but that we would be due for renovations in Kiva as well if we wanted to have a proper studio. And that may, again, don't take this as written in stone, that may have to involve sectioning off the Kiva portion, the lecture hall, from the studio that's in the back and making that soundproof, because I understand there are some audio issues there too. So that's one possibility. We've talked about Scout Hall, but I don't think that that's an option anymore, from what I understand. And I know the basement here has been suggested, but our experts said, please don't do that. And being in the basement is not good for electronics. There are issues down there, I think, especially with loud noises and due to the fire running. So we'll definitely prefer not to do that.
Could I have your name, please?
Yell aloud.
Any other comments? Kate? Kate Fulton.
I mean, you've been talking about possibility of 3 channels, government, education, and residence. And we live in Pineview Apartments, which is a senior residence. And we have already given this to people here. So I'd like you to see this. In fact, Diana, if you have one. Now, we have an extra, so I'll give it to you. But I know that may not seem like it's, well, it is relevant, because as long as you obviously this contract, that does cover residents as well, it covers the whole town.
The petition asks for what now?
Yeah, can I read this, Kate?
Sure.
This is from the residents of Pineview Apartments, 79 Bridge Street. We, the undersigned residents of Pineview Apartments, located at 79 Bridge Street and operated under the auspices of SK Management of New Ipswich, New Hampshire, request that cable service be provided at a bulk rate for residents of this senior housing. Now, I guess what we all need to know is, is there a bulk rate? Do you do that with other places?
I don't know the specifics, especially talking to Paul about the fact it's built into their rent. I'm not sure exactly what we can do, but I'm happy to pass this on to our multiple dwelling unit services team, and then also negotiate with the town on a senior discount. So hopefully both of those would be impactful to help with the senior
If you would do that.
And you know what I also thought of when you folks were speaking about having programs televised throughout the town, is we do have, or I don't know if it's not quite there yet, but our new senior center might also be nice if we could have something televised from there.
It's on the list.
Is it on the list? Oh,
All right. So I think we have to have some definition to what a bulk rate is. And how
But
many
is there
people
such a
are bulk
thing?
rate.
Is there such a thing as a bulk
Well,
rate?
that's what I asked.
We're trying to find out.
I mean, no, but do you do that for other towns?
Again, as far as a bulk rate that's in the license, no, but again, happy to work with our sales team and what we can negotiate license to
I
negotiate.
mean, residents at the housing estate, they do pay different rates. Now, I know it depends on the number of stations, channels that you can receive, but at the same time, it could be seen, there are 30 units at the housing estate. Most of them are single dwellers, although there are some couples, married couples there. And so therefore, it would seem to me to be enough people, might consider other, I don't know, Phoenix Court, but the point is that, I think there would be enough customers that it would make sense Comcast could still make their profit and also serve the senior population of the town.
Mr. Sullivan, you want to weigh in on this?
Well, sure. Do you have cable service now? You do.
He does, yeah.
Okay, so one is that it is something that's outside of the license. The board, rightly so, is trying to act as a conduit between the residents who have a request and a desire and Comcast. And I think that's good that it came up here and that passing through the board back to Comcast and Ben Berman and the folks. So I think that's positive. But then from that point, it really is a non-licensed matter, meaning that Comcast has its rates. It does have bulk rates. There are some companies that have more of sort of bulk customers, but they do have bulk customers. And so what you need to do is stay in contact. And if it's something that you don't get to something that's satisfactory, the board has no legal authority to do anything different about it. You can't say to Comcast you won't get a license or you have to do it. But it could say to Comcast, could you relook at this? Is there some way you can get it done? So to help assist with it, great. I think that's a start. Hopefully Comcast can come back and see if it's in their interest to do a bulk rate. They get all the customers, they get one bill, and so there are advantages to Comcast. That's the basis of the bulk rate. Having everyone pay and one party paying, that their costs are lessened and they're prepared to lower the rates to the folks who get services. And senior housing is a fairly common area when bulk rates are given, that it's oftentimes it's senior type housing.
Yeah, we wanted the selectmen to know because we were hoping to have their support and encouragement, and I think also it was good to talk to
All right, Mr. Perlman, could you find out some more about this and let Mr. Markle know?
Absolutely.
And hopefully we can work something out. Doug?
Yeah, a couple of questions and comments that I have is, does this contract only relate to Comcast television, or does it also include internet service and telephone service that comes through Comcast?
Just cable.
Just
Cable
cable,
TV.
okay. As many people have said, I do think the Channel 8 is a very valuable tool that is definitely underutilized by us. And again, whether that's truly a funding issue that's causing that, or just a lack of education on, our part of spreading the word of what the resources are available. So we do need to, make some improvements with it and definitely utilize it better. So, I'm hoping that we can get some positive things out of the new contract and, really form a way or a plan of how to get more use out of the station.
Mr. Sullivan, you said just cable. Are you saying it's just television? That the contract doesn't cover internet or telephone?
That's right, it only covers the television part, the video part. It doesn't cover internet or telephone. But, the availability of cable means that by definition of the modern system and their choices, that if you have cable available, you also have broadband available, internet, and you also have telephone available. So to the extent that almost all of the town is covered, people are getting the advantage of those other services. But that's a byproduct. We can't, under federal law, regulate internet or federal and state law combined. We don't have a legal basis to regulate those two other areas. And as you know, cable and video is changing. The world going forward is not totally clear. So it's a good time for a town to look at the current situation and to try to look at the next 10 years and ensure that it has the funding needed to provide a sustainable program. As the selectman said about using a channel more, so much of that will come, and you'll see when you have a employee or a nonprofit, an executive director, working a certain number of hours, they'll be able to facilitate so much outreach and planning. I said earlier today, I've seen that in towns where someone comes on, even if it's only part-time, and they can reach out and get people excited, and that'll just be multiplied, and all of a sudden, this will be the place to be. As a parent of younger children, I know when you're talking before about events, parents are looking for places for the children to go to. As Bob Markle said, video and is part of every part of society. Every job that folks have going forward will likely have a video component. Let them learn that here in Templeton, not just in school, but after school. So when someone graduates, they're no longer told they can't come back to school. They're over 18. They have a place to go where seniors can go and produce media that has a great effect. So I think what you'll find is that very few towns have done as well as Templeton with limited funding, and that was your growing period. Now's your chance to really expand that and make it something that's sustainable and that multiplies the volunteer effect that you've already seen here in town.
Yes, ma'am?
So if that funding was increased to 5%, where does that come from? Where does it come from, that 5%?
It's 5% of the fees collected in town.
So does that mean because you get more, Comcast gets less?
I don't think it works that way. All right, Diane, do you have anything?
Yep. So I just kind of have a few comments and a question too. With the contract being 10 years and technology continually changing, what about streaming, or like how do you plan for that going forward? Because next year it's going to be totally different than what we have today. And I will say that all the things that you have come to us with now and before, having a program at the school, definitely having a dedicated education channel, just, it needs to be more vibrant. And I hear a lot of people say that they want live, they would love to see meetings live, and that includes town hall, graduation, concerts, football games, not just here, but every department, not just a selectmen's meeting, but live. And then again, that's where I'm kind of going with the streaming thing, and how are you going to plan for that going forward?
I'll take part of that.
Okay.
I think you have to plan on this for streaming going forward, because as I alluded a couple times in the presentation I gave, it shouldn't just be about Channel 8, because we don't know what's going to happen with people with all the streaming. So I think that it really becomes multimedia, and we're looking at streaming with much of the video that's produced there in some capacity.
The needs of the program are such that on the capital needs, that those dollars will need to be very much front-loaded, if not totally front-loaded, because what you're working with now needs to be upgraded and replaced, although you'll have your prepared server. So from the capital perspective, the dollars really need to be front-loaded, and that'll be a position of the committee and through the board with Comcast. With respect to streaming, for instance, on the internet, Comcast now appreciates the fact that the internet and cable are not as distinguishable as they were before, so that you will be able, you don't currently stream on the internet, but many access programs stream on the internet, so that, and in fact, in a more perfect world, we would have video on demand from Comcast. We will ask Comcast, not clear we'll get it, but that there be video on demand of the public education government access program. So just like you have now in your system, you have a perfect video electronic program guide. You can pick, you can take the selectmen's meeting, you can take the school committee meeting. That's something we'd like to have. If we don't have it, we'd like to come back and talk about it. But the funding would allow for the equipment to stream on the internet. The cost of that is not very intense, not very high. So you could, in a reasonable time going forward, with new capital funding, be streaming on the internet. So you have a whole panoply of different government meetings and graduations and games that are available that you hit. Finally, with respect to the license, the world technologically is changing, there's no question. And it seems to me is that Comcast understands that there's competition, some of which they have some role in the internet, but they've said that there's always been competition. And they've managed to, for a number of quarters, over 8 quarters at one point, not to lose basic subscribers. So while the world's changing, the situation of the current time is that cable is continuing, that they're keeping customers more so than most companies. So I think what's in the town's interest is to do a 10-year license that has capital to allow you to improve your program now, and that has good operating support so you can grow and institutionalize your program. Then as that goes along, if the world changes such that there's a loss of funding, well, one, we have a license in place so that may have some legal ramification. And two, even as the world changes, for instance, Comcast recently announced they're providing a internet service to watch video. But they've also stated, as of now, that they intend that to be deep cable. It's not limited by bandwidth restrictions that they have on the internet, and they deem that to be gross revenues for which cable franchise fees percentages would apply. So that you're right, the world's changing, but the best way to protect yourself is to get a license now that looks at the world as it currently is, to upgrade your program, and then along those 10 years, we don't have certainty of what will happen, but you'll be in the best position to figure out how to change it as the technology and or the law changes throughout that period of time.
All right, we've heard from Doug and Diane. Do you have anything you want to say? What's that? Chief report, you want to?
I was at the meeting this afternoon, and it was very good. We we shared quite a lot. I think what I took out of the meeting this afternoon was that there is a commitment to Comcast within the community. And the community was probably the keynote I put to it. We are 4 separate precincts making up one community of Templeton. And the best way to reach that community is through a video link. And Comcast has been providing it, doing a good job. Most people agree to that. And we see benefit that we could bring to the internet or to Comcast or whatever the provider is, such as CPR training and other things like that. So we're a little greedy about it too. We'd love to see the government channel develop. We'd like to see that information be broadcast to the people, just so that, the benefits may have an impact that we can't even foresee yet.
Dave, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, does Mr. Castle happen to know how many customers are using Comcast now?
I think we have about 2,300, maybe 2,370.
Quite a few.
Can I have your name, please?
Is that about 20%?
That's 2,300 you said? Do we know how many households in town there are roughly?
2,370. Some
Yeah,
of
roughly double.
2,370.
Roughly double that.
At least
Households in town
50%.
roughly double that.
Double.
All right, does anybody else have anything they want to add or ask any of the people here? Yes, sir, you are.
Brian Tangway, I'm president of the Narragansett Historical Society, and I'm here just to show my support to build up the station to make it more exciting, like it was mentioned several times. Steve and I talked about putting our efforts behind him to help make something more interesting to show in between some of the segments of the already slotted TV items that he's listing on the show. We can do several events, and we're turning into like a community center as it is, trying to bring back the fact that the Historical Society is not just a little place that has a bunch of antiques in it. And in that vein, it was over the years slowly dying. So we had to come back in a way that was more viable in the community. And so far, every effort we've made in the last 2 years has brought so much interest and so many comments from people saying, you guys are doing a great job, I can't wait for the next one. So everything we're doing is working. It's getting better and better. Just by advertising in the papers with a couple of pictures and putting it on Facebook, it's making our organization grow and grow. So we're coming out of the cellar as it was, and with participation with Templeton TV, I can see that we can probably jet forward a lot quicker by getting some of our events like the engine show that we do in September, the Pumpkin Fest, and the Jack Frost Festival. Even if we do a bunch of clips and put them together as a video, as a little commercial, this is what happened over the weekend, and run it a few times on TV, it would give us that exposure and bring in new members to us. So it would definitely help save Templeton's museum, and I think it's an important part that we would be happy to help support.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, you are.
My name is Marcia Green. I sit on the cable committee with Steve and have for the last year. I'm here to show my support because I think a lot of the ideas that we've been talking about for the last year are exciting and they're important to the town. This gentleman is absolutely correct. We've got to keep what's good about Templeton alive and share it as much as possible.
I totally agree. I think that we have a lot of people who have moved into town recently that may not have the knowledge of what the town was, back.
And we gotta help them out.
That's right. Now, if I may, Mr. Sullivan, could you give us some idea of what the process is? What happens now after this meeting?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The town, the board I know is authorizing the town administrator to issue the request for proposal. That just goes to the one company, Comcast, and that's part of this formal process. So the cable license has two simultaneous processes. the formal process where we'll be sending Comcast a request for proposal. That request for proposal, which your committee and the town administrator has, as you know, worked on, has put together all the ascertainment, the personnel needs, the operating needs, the capital needs, and we'll submit that to Comcast, and they will, within a month, provide a proposal. That's the formal process. At the same time, as soon as Mr. Perlman is available, probably before they submit a formal proposal, the committee, or it's a subcommittee of the committee, will sit down with Mr. Perlman and try to negotiate the key parts of the license at various times, or upon completion coming back to the board with the results of those discussions, negotiations, to see if it's acceptable. And then at that point, when we reach a deal on the major issues discussed here today, I will draft up a draft cable license. We'll provide it to Comcast and to the board, get your input, and then finalize that license on or before the expiration date in December. So I think we're on a good track for timing. I expect we will begin negotiations upcoming in August, with the hope that we hopefully be done in the perfect world by sometime in September and have a new cable license before the expiration. I think that given the license you have, I think there's very good reason to believe we can get to a yes. The only thing that could stop that at times, and I think I'll have a good discussion with Mr. Perlman, is that sometimes there are towns that, let's say, have a higher level of funding, and then you do a new license, you maintain it, or you might go up a little bit. There are other towns that have been working their way up that might have currently a somewhat lower level of funding. And sometimes you find a resistance among the cable companies to have that town come to a point that's higher because they're used to the lower amount. And here what I'd say is, well, that doesn't make sense. Templeton had a license that met its needs. You had a good license that met Templeton needs for the last 10 years. But because you've taken advantage of that and grown the program, your needs are now much greater. And the fact that your funding was here beforehand shouldn't prevent you from getting the funding you need. You shouldn't be disadvantageous compared to communities that had higher funding before. With that understanding, I think that there's good room here to get to a fair license that works for both parties. The final point is, and this is pointed out here today by Steve and others, the better the PEG access program, the more customers stay with Comcast, that don't go to satellite, they stick, and we know from experience that when the selectmen's meetings are on and people can't get them, there's an outcry. There are people who, when you get your children's program in the school, when you get the community, you get sports, those folks stick with cable because those channels and that programming is an integral part of what people want. So we can make them a better cable company. What they need to do is provide sufficient funding so we can do that job here in Templeton.
All right. Do we have any questions, concerns about what Mr. Sullivan just talked about in the process? I think that we should, as a board, authorize the...
Close the hearing and then authorize the RFP.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Moved and seconded to close the hearing. Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
I will vote yes, that's unanimous. And you're all welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but we really appreciate that people came out and the interest is there. So we hopefully are going to do better by Templeton in the coming years.
Well, thank you.
And Mr. Sullivan, thank you very much for your time and coming out here.
Thank you.
Mr. Perlman, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. We're open to ideas at any time.
Sure.
This is my letter of support from the
Thank you.
historical